If I misunderstood your invitation, say so plainly.
Desmond's smile vanished when Charlotte Marsden crossed his dining room in a Duchess's ivory gown, switched 2 place cards, and sat in the chair no one had assigned her. "You said I might dine with you if I could find a Duchess's gown." "His gown, your grace," she reminded him, while every face at the table turned toward the maid. He had expected to remain behind the chairs. Instead of ordering her out, Desmond lowered the wine glass in his hand and asked why she had moved the corrected cards. Rowena Everly rose. "Household women serve dinner, your grace. They do not eat it." Charlotte kept one gloved finger on the card. "I moved Mrs. Everly away from the Dowager Duchess before Bath parish funds become our soup, and the gentleman with the famous stables nearer to you before his horses become our dinner. If I misunderstood your invitation, say so plainly. I will not pretend I misheard you merely to spare us both." Desmond studied the pairings, then nodded to the footman. "Serve Miss Marsden where she sits. If she remains, I must consider my own place an insult. I should be sorry to lose your company. There is also an excellent chair nearer the fire." Rowena sat. By the 3rd course, the horse-mad gentleman was talking about horses. Charlotte lured him into a guessing game about prized possessions. He claimed a polished phaeton before she finished. Desmond redirected him into a racecourse story. Their eyes met over the candles, one room to her for exposing vanity, one to him for giving it somewhere harmless to go. When the ladies rose, Desmond stopped beside her chair. "Tomorrow morning, bring that judgment to the guest lists. I have 3 receptions left. An order. I am considering paying you." That was a far more dangerous invitation than the first. Mourning made the gown seem almost impossible. Charlotte stood in Beatrice Tremaine's morning room wearing her ordinary brown muslin, while the Dowager Duchess drank tea as if lending a maid an ivory dinner gown were no stranger than lending her an umbrella. Desmond entered with a folded guest list beneath his arm. "Your Grace," Charlotte said, giving him a crisp curtsy. "Miss Marsden, my aunt tells me you understand household currents better than my secretary understands rank." Beatrice lifted her cup. "Your secretary thinks 2 people cease hating one another if their names are written neatly enough." Charlotte smiled despite herself. Desmond laid the list on the table. 3 receptions remain, ending with the masquerade. I want you to review invitations and seating. If you can give me a sound household reason, you may recommend that a guest not be invited. You will be paid separately from whatever my aunt pays you as her companion." Charlotte had prepared herself for gratitude, which she could refuse, or charity, which she could despise. Wages were another matter. Wages could become a room in Bath with a lock that belonged to her. "I will not take it as an apology for last night. It is not one, nor as a favor, still not one." She looked at the list. "Then call it an engagement with terms." Desmond's mouth moved at one corner. "Very well. My term is this: if one of your jokes may land on a servant rather than a guest, I want to know what you intend before you begin." Charlotte's smile thinned. He had noticed more than the room's laughter. "My term," she said, "is that if you save a room by appeasing someone cruel, you tell me whose comfort you traded away to purchase the peace." The humor left his face. After a moment he nodded. "Agreed."
Luther?
They bent over the list. Charlotte's finger stopped at Sir Elias Vance. "No." Desmond looked at her. "That was rapid. He struck a stable lad last month because the wrong horse was brought round. He has influence among the county magistrates, and he will be served here by the same people he frightens elsewhere." Desmond considered the name. "I could place him at the far end of the lawn and bring his carriage to the side entrance. Another door does not alter who must carry his plate." He tapped the paper once. Charlotte knew the gesture by now. Another compromise was coming. She waited. At last he took the pen and crossed out Vance's name. "Very well, I shall invite Cousin Martin instead. He is harmless, deaf in one ear, and dislikes horses." Charlotte laughed. "A formidable qualification." Desmond slid the list toward her. Tomorrow's garden breakfast. I wager I read the room before you do. You would lose. Then the loser eats cook's oversweet bath buns. Without complaint. Cruelty beneath a polished exterior. I knew it. Beatrice coughed into her tea to hide a laugh. For the first time in years, Charlotte left a morning room with wages attached to her judgment rather than gratitude attached to her obedience. The first test began with ribbons. Charlotte stood on the terrace the next morning, tying identical blue bows to the backs of the white garden chairs. Without place cards, the arrangement looked pleasingly innocent. Desmond came down the steps. Are we decorating or starting a rebellion? Both, if Providence is kind. Lady Arrington has spent a week declaring that widowhood has cured her of caring about precedence. I say she changes seats twice before she settles. Desmond studied the lawn rather than the ribbons. She does not care where she sits. She cares who sees where she sits. Lord Whitby. His brows rose. Charlotte pointed at him with the remaining ribbon. Do not look so pleased. You have not won anything yet. The guests arrived beneath a pale morning sky. Lady Arrington praised the ribbons, chose a chair near the roses, endured it for 10 minutes, then complained of the sun and moved beside the fountain. Charlotte caught Desmond's eye and lifted one finger. The second move came when Lord Whitby began speaking to a younger woman. Lady Arrington rose again, this time declaring the paving damp. Her voice had acquired the brittle edge of someone whose performance had ceased to amuse even herself. A few heads turned. Charlotte felt the danger before the laugh came. She had wanted the ribbons to reveal a false indifference, not make a lonely widow the entertainment. Desmond crossed the lawn at an easy pace. Lady Arrington, you have rescued me, he said. I need a judgment on the new orchids, and everyone else has been too polite to tell me whether they are magnificent or monstrous. The widow's shoulders lowered by half an inch. She took his arm and allowed herself to be led toward the conservatory, elevated from jealous woman to trusted critic. Charlotte watched them go. He had not denied what Lady Arrington wanted. He had simply given her a way to want it without being laughed at. That evening, Charlotte was marking changes to the next guest list when Desmond entered the library carrying a silver plate. One bath bun sat upon it, glazed so heavily it shone. He placed it before her. You predicted 2 moves, and you predicted Whitby. Then we have reached a diplomatic impasse. No. Charlotte cut the bun cleanly in half and pushed one piece toward him. We have reached justice. He regarded the pastry with dislike. You are severe. Fair is fair, your grace. They ate. The bun was appalling. After a moment, Desmond said, What do you do when no one in the room requires managing? The question slipped past her defenses because he asked it without softness. Charlotte looked at the fire. I imagine sitting in a chair without wondering who will decide I have occupied it too long. Too true. She brightened her voice at once. Then I invent ways to torment your cook. Desmond did not ask what she meant. He only finished his half of the bun. That restraint unsettled her more than curiosity would have done. One room to you, she said. His gaze warmed. Only one, you may earn another tomorrow.
Then the swan dies.
By the second week, servants had begun coming to Charlotte before they came to the secretary. A footman mentioned that one guest drank too quickly when seated near his elder brother. A maid warned that 2 ladies who exchanged kisses in public had not spoken privately in 9 months. Charlotte did not use every whisper. Knowing a weakness did not make it useful. The kitchen taught Desmond that lesson in another form. Charlotte found cook bent over a spun sugar swan, while 2 exhausted kitchen maids held their breath whenever its wings trembled. What crime has that creature committed? Charlotte asked. Cook wiped his forehead. The Duchess of Devonshire praised one last season. The steward thought, His Grace's table ought to remember it. Desmond entered just in time to hear Charlotte say, "His Grace's table ought to remember that people prefer hot food to monuments." "It is hospitality," he said. "A remembered pleasure can be worth the trouble." Charlotte handed him a wooden spoon. "Then name the dish cook most enjoys making." Desmond looked at the ovens, the copper pans, the swan. "Venison." The kitchen maids covered smiles with their hands. Cook gave him mercy. "The roasted root tart, Your Grace. My mother's receipt." Charlotte leaned on the spoon. "There. A dish with a memory attached to the man making it, rather than the guest who once admired it." Desmond looked at Cook. "Which would you rather serve, the tart, Your Grace?" Then the swan dies. One of the maids made a noise suspiciously like a cheer. Charlotte laughed with them. Not because anyone had asked her to be amusing, not because laughter could soften an insult before it landed. She laughed because the sugar swan had lost, and everyone in the kitchen was glad of it. Desmond looked at her across the work table, and she became abruptly aware that flour marked her sleeve, and that she was smiling with her whole face. She turned back to the tart. For the rest of that day, what lingered was not the ruined swan, but Desmond's quiet smile across the flour-dusted table, as if her laughter had been something worth hearing even when no guest was present. 2 days later, she made him ridiculous in return. A Pall Mall game among early arrivals had become unbearable because Lord Halstead barked instructions at a younger partner. Charlotte stopped the play, rearranged the mallets, and announced that every titled player must use the opposite hand, while every instruction came from the junior partner. Desmond stood beside her. 10 minutes before Halstead throws his mallet into the pond. 40. If you win, Charlotte untied a narrow pink ribbon from a score basket. You wear this on your coat through tea, and if I win, you may choose my seat at supper. That made him smile. Dangerous stakes. The game lasted 45 minutes. Halstead, unable to dominate with skill, finally listened to his partner and discovered he enjoyed winning with him. Desmond accepted the ribbon without protest. Charlotte pinned it to his black coat herself. Her fingertips brushed the warm wool above his waistcoat, close enough to feel the rise of his breath beneath it. For one beat, that breath stopped. She looked up. His expression was still composed, but his eyes were not amused now. Charlotte fastened the ribbon before her own pulse could make a spectacle of her. "You may remove it after tea." I had not intended to disgrace the wager. He wore it while greeting 2 late arrivals, and while an elderly baronet stared at it as though the Duke had joined a travelling circus. Charlotte waited for embarrassment. None appeared. Desmond treated the ribbon as though dukes had worn pink forfeits since the conquest. Something in her chest loosened. Power that could survive laughter was a rarer thing than power that demanded respect. As tea ended, Rowena paused beside Charlotte. Her gaze rested on the pink ribbon still fixed to Desmond's coat. "His Grace can afford to be laughed at," she murmured. "Not everyone in this house has that luxury." Charlotte kept her smile. "Then I shall try to choose my jokes with care." Rowena's answering look made it clear she did not mean jokes. The music rehearsal brought a different problem. Guests arrived early while the quartet was still tuning in the Great Hall. The formal receiving line trapped newcomers at the doors, servants with trays could not pass, and a painfully shy young woman stood between 3 louder families with nowhere to look. Charlotte took in the jam from the stair landing. "Gallery," she called to the nearest footman. "Send the next arrivals through the long gallery and place Miss Fenton by the portrait with the green parrot." The footman hesitated only long enough to glance toward Desmond. His planned receiving line was dissolving. Charlotte expected him to rescue the plan because it was his. Instead, he stepped out of the doorway. "You heard Miss Marsden," he said. "The gallery." He followed her route, greeting guests beneath portraits rather than beneath the carved arms over the front doors. Within minutes, the hall cleared. Miss Fenton was explaining the parrot portrait to another shy visitor, and the quartet could tune without being trampled. When Charlotte passed Desmond, he murmured, "That room was yours." She nearly missed a step. He had remembered the words exactly. That night, long after supper, Charlotte was sorting leftover sweets in the dining room to be sent down for the servants' breakfast. The house had gone quiet enough for the settling wood to sound loud. Desmond appeared in the doorway with his cravat loosened. "You are trespassing," Charlotte said. "In my dining room on the Maid's sugared almonds." He reached for one. Charlotte moved the tray. "I own the almonds," he said. "I control their distribution. Another theft, and I seat you beside Lady Arrington's lapdog at the masquerade." He stole one anyway. Charlotte slapped lightly at his fingers and caught herself laughing. No audience, no room to manage, no insult waiting to be turned into a joke before it hurt. Desmond leaned one hip against the table. "You have proved a chair is more dangerous in your hands than a sword. I have not yet tried the sword. Please do not. My carpets have suffered enough." She looked up to answer and found him already watching her. The play between them went still. He was close enough for her to see the faint shadow of weariness beneath his eyes, the cost of 5 weeks spent keeping every guest comfortable. His gaze did not drop to her hands or her plain gown. It stayed on her face as if he had forgotten there was a room to read. Charlotte did not step back. For one suspended moment, she wanted him to cross the small distance. Then footsteps sounded in the passage. Desmond straightened. Charlotte moved the almonds to the center of the table. Neither of them mentioned what had nearly happened. That made it harder to dismiss. The whispers arrived before the final masquerade. Charlotte first noticed them because 2 ladies stopped speaking when she entered the morning room. By luncheon, a footman had heard that the Duke of Greywick had handed his household to a companion because he fancied her. By tea, the story had become that Charlotte had arranged every invitation to place herself nearer him. Rowena did not need to invent much. She only had to take Charlotte's visible authority and explain it as appetite. Late that afternoon, Charlotte went to the library with a list of cellar deliveries. The door opened before she touched it. Rowena came out satisfied enough to make Charlotte's stomach tighten. "Your Grace is learning prudence," her stepmother said. Charlotte entered. Desmond stood beside the desk with both hands resting on the back of a chair. The stillness was wrong. Usually under pressure, he moved things. "What did she ask you for?" Charlotte said. His eyes met hers. "She says several families are considering leaving before the masquerade. She offered to quiet the talk if your work became less visible, and I told her I would consider how the evening might be arranged." Charlotte waited. He went on too carefully. "The kitchens and cellars need close direction. It may be simplest if you manage the masquerade from behind the scenes. For one evening only. Your authority would remain." The old coldness moved through her so quickly that she almost smiled. That was her worst habit, make the wound amusing before anyone else could see it. The terrible part was not that he sounded harsh. He sounded reasonable. He had found a way to push her from the room while naming the push efficiency. She set the cellar list on his desk. "You want the work and not the woman doing it." "That is not what I said." "No. You said it more politely." She heard her own voice flatten. "Is my judgment welcome only if your guests need not watch me possess it? Charlotte, the masquerade matters to more than us. And therefore I am the easiest person to remove." His fingers whitened on the carved chairback, but he did not follow. His gaze went to the list, the door, the windows, every possible route by which a room might be saved. Not to her. That hurt more than anger would have. She spared him the search. "It is a matter of cowardice, Your Grace." Then she left. Her anger wanted witnesses. That was how she ended up in the afternoon parlor with a stack of game cards and a bad idea. Charlotte called it a rank lottery. Titled guests drew foolish household challenges, while junior members of the staff judged the attempt fold. A napkin cleanly, carry an empty tray without rattling the glasses. Match 3 bell pulls to the rooms they served. For 5 minutes the room laughed, and Charlotte laughed brightest of all. Then an irritable earl drew a card requiring him to carry a tea tray from the sideboard to the hearth, while Thomas, a young footman, judged whether a cup rattled in its saucer. The earl stared at the card. Thomas went pale before the man had even lifted the tray. "You are to judge me," the earl said. "It is only the game, my lord." "The game permits a footman to correct an earl." The laughter died. Charlotte should have crossed the room at once. The cards were hers. The insult, however foolishly intended, was hers. Instead, fear took the shape it had worn all her life movement. She slipped through the side door and down the service passage before anyone could see that her hands were shaking. Halfway to the kitchen stairs, she stopped. From the parlour came Desmond's voice, low enough that she had to strain to hear it. My Lord Thomas drew no card and made no rule. The disrespect. If the game offends you, leave the game. You will not make a servant answer for another person's folly. A pause. Then the Earl's voice louder. You would choose this nonsense over my support. I would choose the rules of my own house. Your carriage may be brought round whenever you wish. Charlotte closed her eyes. Desmond had paid the price she had accused him of avoiding. Thomas was still paying hers. She turned back. The servants' hall was quiet when she found him there a few minutes later, sitting with a cup he had not touched. Beatrice stood near the hearth, her expression grave. Charlotte went straight to Thomas. The game was mine, she said. No joke came to help her. I was angry with someone else. I used you to make my point, and when the point turned ugly, I ran. You should not have been left to answer for me. I am sorry. Thomas looked at her for a long moment. Thank you, miss. I have struck your name from the judging nonsense. You are back on the west drawing-room duty if you still want it. I do. Charlotte turned to Beatrice. And I abandoned your guests in the middle of a foolish game. The Dowager Duchess lifted one brow. Then do not abandon the next room. I will not. Desmond stood in the doorway. Charlotte had not heard him arrive. The gentleman has ordered his carriage, he said. Mrs. Everleigh's arrangement with me is ended. You will manage the masquerade from wherever you judge best. He did not ask to be forgiven. Charlotte looked at the empty game cards still in her hand, then at him. One room to you, she said quietly. No, Desmond answered. That one cost us both. She nodded. He was right. On the day before the masquerade, Rowena began questioning servants about Charlotte's life before she entered Beatrice's household. A maid arrived in the morning room near tears after being pressed for details she did not know. Charlotte's first thought was wicked and immediate invent 3 contradictory childhoods and let Rowena drown in them. She almost smiled. Then she folded the inventory sheet in her hand and went to find Desmond. I was in this gallery checking lantern hooks. Keep Rowena out of the staff passage until midnight, Charlotte said. No joke. No preface. He looked down from the lantern. Until midnight. The ballroom is mine. Done. That was all. Later, Charlotte saw the consequence of the agreement at the green baize door. Rowena approached it. Desmond, speaking with an elderly guest nearby, shifted half a step and addressed her before she could touch the handle. Charlotte kept walking. She did not check whether he remained there. She had asked. He had agreed. The rest of the house still belonged to her attention. That trust felt stranger than independence had ever felt. Masquerade preparations consumed the afternoon. Charlotte changed the order of the dances, twice moved the supper opening by 15 minutes, and created a quiet side route for a shy young woman whose family wished to leave before the masks came off. At first, Charlotte resisted. Then she misses the best part. Desmond glanced at her. Perhaps being watched is not the best part for everyone. The words landed cleanly because he did not use them against her. Charlotte looked toward the young woman whose hands had been twisting her fan until the sticks creaked. She is not pretending, Charlotte said. No. Charlotte altered the route herself, placing a maid by the west gallery to guide the family out without crossing the ballroom. Not every rule needed breaking. Some people needed a door. By evening, the rooms glowed with candles and beeswax. Hothouse flowers crowded the mantels. Musicians tuned behind the screen, while masked guests filled the ballroom with silk laughter and guesses. Charlotte moved among them in a dark blue evening gown Beatrice had insisted she wear. It was her own gown, not borrowed rank, and she liked it better for that.
I have rarely worked harder for an unspecified vacancy.
Near the terrace doors, Desmond handed her a glass of water. "What happens tomorrow?" he asked. "The house becomes quiet and your secretary blames me for everything that went wrong. I meant after the engagement ends." Charlotte looked into the dark garden. Her wages already existed in her mind as keys rent a window over a Bath street. "I visit 2 sets of rooms in Bath. If either has decent light and a landlord who does not ask impertinent questions, I may take them." And after that, she turned the glass between her fingers. "Perhaps I find a man who can still surprise me when there are no guest lists to arrange." Desmond's expression changed very slightly. "I have rarely worked harder for an unspecified vacancy." Charlotte's laugh came softly. "Then you should hope the competition is weak." A bell sounded from the far end of the room. 10 minutes until the masks came off. Rowena had spent those 10 minutes better than either of them knew. The rumour moved first as a change in posture. A lady who had obeyed Charlotte's direction toward the supper room stopped midway and turned away. A gentleman asked a footman whether Miss Marsden truly had authority to alter the dance order. The footman glanced toward Desmond before answering. Then Charlotte heard the words. Stole the invitation. Borrowed a Duchess's gown to pass herself off. Trapped Greywick into employing her so he would not look foolish. The lie was clever because it attached itself to things that had happened. Rowena stood near the card room, masked in silver, speaking softly to 2 influential matrons. She did not need to raise her voice. Other people did the carrying for her. Charlotte felt the old impulse leap up, make it funny. She could have announced a game in which everyone confessed the most ridiculous thing they had ever done for an invitation. She could have turned Rowena's accusation into a joke sharp enough to cut her. Her mind produced 3 versions before she took one breath. Then she saw Thomas crossing the room with a tray. No. Charlotte put down the dance card she was holding and walked toward the green baize door. Desmond intercepted her near the gallery. For one dreadful instant, his face held the same stillness it had in the library. Before Charlotte could speak, one of the matrons called across the space. "Your Grace, are we to understand that Miss Marsden still directs the evening?" It was not loud, yet the question travelled farther than a shout. Charlotte saw 2 families pause near their cloaks. Desmond looked toward them, then toward Rowena. The old answer was there in the silence, move Charlotte out of sight. Soothe everyone else, call the loss temporary. Her stomach tightened. "Rowena stays out of the staff passage until midnight," Charlotte said. His answer came at once. "She does." The matron was still waiting. Desmond turned to her. "Miss Marsden arranged this evening at my request and will continue to direct it. Every invitation in this house remains mine to honor, including hers. Anyone who finds that arrangement uncomfortable may use the west exit without insult." For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Desmond did, not toward Rowena first, toward the people wavering around her. Charlotte watched him stop beside Lord Whitby, and Lady Arrington praise the terrace arrangement and name Charlotte as the person responsible for it. He asked Beatrice to receive one family that had begun whispering about leaving. He gave another gentleman an easy route back to the dance floor by asking for his opinion on the musicians. Each act was small. Together they changed where the room looked. Only then did Desmond reach Rowena. Charlotte could not hear every word, but she heard enough. "If Greywick no longer suits you, Mrs. Everleigh, your carriage can be brought to the front steps. You may retire without insult. He had given her an exit. He had not given her Charlotte. The musicians reached the chord that signaled midnight. This part was hers. Charlotte walked to the center of the ballroom before anyone could decide she had been pushed there. Her fingers found the ribbons of her mask and untied them. She removed it first. Silk whispered as heads turned. A slipper scraped the floorboards. The whispers died. On the nearest supper table lay a stack of blank place cards. Charlotte picked one up, crossed to an empty chair, and set the card before it. It appears there is some doubt about invitations, she said. A few people shifted. Rowena's chin lifted. Charlotte rested her fingertips on the blank card. Anyone who believes a chair becomes respectable only after a title is written on this may leave it empty. Anyone who believes a host may choose whom he invites may stay for the next dance. A nervous laugh sounded somewhere behind her. Good. Laughter could still be useful when it did not need a victim. The gown I wore at the first dinner belonged to the Dowager Duchess and was lent to me by her. The Duke made a foolish joke. Desmond, several yards away, inclined his head in acknowledgement. Charlotte continued. I chose to accept it as an invitation. He chose to honor it. Everything I have done for these receptions since then has been paid work. I stole no invitation, and I require no borrowed title. She lifted the blank card. I also have no intention of standing behind a door merely because someone else finds the sight of my wages inconvenient. Then she set the card down. No plea, no demand for belief. Desmond looked toward the musicians and nodded. The country dance began. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then a young couple stepped onto the floor. Lady Arrington followed with Lord Whitby. Another pair joined them. A family that had been collecting cloaks set them back over a chair. The ballroom filled again. Rowena remained near the wall, still perfectly free to leave, and suddenly unable to make leaving look like leadership. Charlotte breathed. Not victory exactly. Something better. The room had continued with her inside it. An hour later, Charlotte escaped to the portrait gallery. She had changed from the blue gown into her plain grey evening dress. No embroidery, no borrowed jewels, no disguise that could be mistaken for a claim. Her skin still remembered the pressure of the mask ribbon at her temples. Desmond's footsteps came softly over the carpet. He stopped beside her beneath a portrait of his grandfather, looking offended by the century. I almost repeated the library, he said. Charlotte turned. When the whispering started, he continued. I saw the old answer. Move you out of sight. Calm everyone else. I disliked myself before I could say it. But you did not say it. No, that matters. He looked toward the ballroom doors where the music carried faintly into the gallery. Does choosing correctly once earn a man anything? Charlotte considered him. It earns tomorrow. His smile was small and tired. Then tomorrow we settle your employment before I make a nuisance of myself. A novel ordering of priorities for a duke. I am learning. She folded her arms. What nuisance I intend to ask whether I may court the woman who keeps ruining my seating plans. The pleasure that rose in Charlotte was dangerous because there was no insult in front of it, to fight no room to conquer first. She let herself have it. You may ask tomorrow, she said. After the wages. Desmond laughed. After the wages. And I warn you now, courtship will not improve your record at room reading. I should be alarmed if it did. His hand lifted, paused only long enough for her to see the question in it, and Charlotte placed her fingers in his. Not rescue, not surrender. A choice small enough, to be honest. The next morning, sunlight lay across the breakfast room, and nobody was there to witness anything. Charlotte entered in simple muslin carrying 2 addresses in Bath that Beatrice had given her for lodgings. She passed the chair usually left for a companion and chose the one beside the window. Desmond came in with the morning paper and began toward his usual place at the head of the table. Charlotte pulled out the chair beside her. He stopped. The old dining room question seemed to hang between them for half a heartbeat. Who had assigned this place? Charlotte smiled. Desmond sat. Before the coffee arrived, he set a small, sealed packet beside her plate. The steward's hand was on the outside, not his. "Your account for the 3 receptions," Desmond said. "The wages due are to be collected from the steward's office this morning. He has also enclosed the terms for the rest of the season at the same weekly rate." Charlotte broke the seal and read the short memorandum. "Same duties, guest lists, seating, household arrangements. The right to tell me when a compromise is cowardice. That last duty deserves an increase. I feared you might say so." She folded the steward's paper again. "I will finish this week as agreed. I shall look at the bathrooms tomorrow. After that, I will tell your steward whether I accept the extension." "Fair. And now you may ask your other question." Desmond folded the newspaper with unnecessary care. "Miss Marsden, may I court you?" Charlotte pretended to consider him longer than she needed. "You may try." His relief was so quickly hidden beneath dignity that she took pity on him and only smiled once. A footman set down toast and a small silver dish containing the last piece of lemon seed cake from the night before. Charlotte and Desmond looked at it. They reached at the same moment. Charlotte was faster. She slid the dish to her side. Thief Desmond said, "Competence." He calmly took the buttered toast from her plate. Charlotte stared at him. "That is theft. Diplomacy." From the doorway, Beatrice paused. Her gaze moved from Charlotte's chosen chair to Desmond's stolen toast. She smiled and turned away toward her own breakfast. At the first dinner, the whole room had wanted to know who gave Charlotte permission to sit. This morning, no one had given it. She had chosen the chair, and she had chosen the man beside it. The end.